Hey everyone, welcome to Robin's Movie Thoughts podcast with your host, Robin Lalisse. Thanks for tuning in. Today I wanted to go over 3 movies I've watched in theaters in April and wanted to give you my thoughts on them. The Accountant 2. 8.5 years after The Accountant released in theaters, Ben Affleck returns as Christian Wolf, an autistic accountant who uses both his mind and martial arts training to become a force for his brand of justice. The first film, which I enjoyed a decent amount, cleverly uses flashbacks, non-linear timeline, and plot twists to slowly reveal his motives and background. In talking about The Accountant 2, which had an early screening on tax day, funny enough, I will be spoiling something huge from the first one, so if by chance you haven't seen the first one, return to this when you have. The big reveal at the end of The Accountant is that a hitman who's been trailing him is his long-lost brother, Braxton, played by Jon Bernthal. The two reunite for a bit, but when the sequel starts, they are both separated from each other after 8 years. But when someone Christian partnered with, retired Treasury Director Raymond King, played by J.K. Simmons, is killed, King's mentee, Treasury Agent Mary Beth Medina, Cynthia Ede Robinson, reaches out for Christian's help in finding out what King was looking for. This despite reservations about his criminal and immoral tendencies, as well as those of Braxton, who Christian elicits aid from soon after. Whereas the first film is more of a mystery, this movie is more of a buddy action comedy. The brothers' personalities reserved for eccentric, clashing in hilarious fashion several times, largely due to the great chemistry between Affleck and Bernthal. This installment also goes heavily toward the neurodivergent / autistic John Wick direction that the predecessor hinted / teased a bit, resulting in a lot more action and creative set pieces. Found myself entertained throughout by these elements, despite the fact that there's a massive testing of the suspension of disbelief in at least a few instances. There's an attempt to have as good plot twists as the first one, and they kind of fall flat. Those bring down a bit what is an incredibly entertaining romp follow-up that is certainly elevated by the Affleck-Bernthal dynamic, despite an iffy story at best. On my personal scale, 7.5 to an 8 out of 10. Warfare is a war film directed by Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza and is based on Mendoza's experiences in the Iraq War. Specifically, the plot revolves around a surveillance mission in November 2006 where Mendoza and the rest of his Navy SEAL team take over a 2-story building overnight while carrying out a surveillance mission. Early on, 20 or so minutes of the movie, there's a lot of sitting and waiting and observing before attempted movement by the SEAL team to enemy activity is when the proverbial bleep hits the fan. From there, the mission plays out in real time, and the normal, everyday brutality of war is showcased in just how much both the soldiers and the Iraqi families caught in the crossfire dealt with. I've enjoyed a lot of Alex Garland projects, including Ex Machina, Annihilation, and his FX miniseries Devs. I have not seen his last 2 films before this one, Men in Civil War. He's always been an incredible sci-fi writer and director, but here is able to tell a vivid and visceral story of war with next to no fluff and soundtrack / music. Instead, it relies on incredible sound design and visuals to bring the experience to the viewer to get inside the head of the ensemble cast of soldiers. One of the highlights includes the up-in-your-face look at the show of force with aircraft coming close to the ground and blowing sand to get enemies to back off. The biggest names in the cast include Will Poulter, Cosmo Jarvis from Shogun, Joseph Quinn, Charles Melton, and Michael Gandolfini, but they are not relied upon as the big stars and or central and active characters in the story. In fact, outside of the opening, there's very little characterization of individuals, instead thrusting them straight into the action of having them adjust on the fly. I was very invested in the experience of this film, and it's an incredible achievement in filmmaking, though its lack of character work and depth into what the civilians go through at times was something that I felt could have been elevated into top-tier war movies if that was included. Granted, the movie really wavered away from this normal battle cliche, war movie cliche, so it didn't delve too much into that, but if there was an innovative way to portray those things, it would have made it a little bit more resonant, but still a really well done film, and I'll give it a 7.5 to an 8 out of 10. Sinners is a vampire horror film directed by Ryan Coogler, set in the 1930s Mississippi Delta. Twin brothers Smoke and Stack, both played by Michael B. Jordan, return to their home in Mississippi after working for the Chicago organized crime outfit, looking to start their own juke joint. Starting with their cousin Sammy, a blues music guitarist played by Miles Catan in his film debut, they recruit a few others to help set up the opening night festivities. Pianist Delta Slim, played by Delroy Lindo, singer Perline, Jamie Lawson, husband and wife shopkeepers Bo and Grace, played by Yao and Lee Jean Lee, a bouncer named Cornbread, played by Omar Benson Miller, and Smoke's estranged wife Annie, played by Wunmi Mozako. Stack also stumbles upon his ex-girlfriend Mary, played by Haley Steinfeld, who decides to come to the event as well. While enjoying their newfound business ownership and freedom, a threat emerges in the form of an Irish immigrant vampire named Remick, played by Jack O'Connell. Much of Sinners is an original blockbuster operating on peak levels, starting with great performances across the board, Jordan perfecting 2 different characters with impressive double work, and maybe the best work he's put on screen. Lindo steals the show in every scene that he's in, bringing both comedic relief and dramatic heft. And Catan may be the heart of the film, showing great vocal range in both speaking and singing, and the relationship Sammy develops with Perline is very beautiful, as are all the film's romantic relationships. Sammy's father, a pastor, does not approve of his music and believes it is potentially devilish, as Sammy is forced to decide whether to live his life religiously or embrace the music. The music in this film is truly transcendent, both through the vocal performances on screen and the incredible musical score by Ludwig Göransson, seamlessly combining aspects of blues, hip-hop, and folk Irish, among other genres, to create a unique creative work. There are a few continuous take sequences, one in particular that, combined with the soundtrack, make for unforgettable imagery that might already be in contention for Best in Cinema this year. I really dug this film. I was not bored at all throughout. If I had any reservations without revealing too much, I would say that the ambitiousness to involve so many movie genres sometimes briefly come off as a bit of whiplash, tonally and out of nowhere. Also, it has an interesting ending, but also one that I'd like to revisit to see the entire picture and see if there was anything that I might have missed. Right now, it's a great movie that Coogler has used his creative muscles to connect to audiences in a unique way, and I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks again for listening to this podcast. You can find me on Letterboxd, Rob Lalisse, or on X at Rob the Movie Buff. Thank you again. Have a great day.